Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I am John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Straightforward topic for you today. Lots of opinions. I expect good comments. Let's do it. Who do you believe is literally evil? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. He's dead now, but Saddam Hussein's eldest son, Uday Hussein, was one of the most sadistic, cruel, violent, and predatory humans in existence. He tortured, essayed, and murdered countless people out of pure spontaneous rage and bloodthirst. His wiki article is super dark and full of insane stories. Under the section Partying, it describes how he'd forced his friends to stand against a wall and consume drinks of 90% alcohol and drugs in 10 minutes. As punishment for not doing so, involved shaving your eyebrows off, beatings, and whippings. Definitely one of those kinds of people who actually deserved to be killed. I knew a guy who retired from an investment firm before he was 40. I inquired if I could get a job at the firm. He told me, if you can look a woman in the eyes who scrubbed floors all her life and tell her that you can quadruple her life savings by investing in a stock you know is worthless, then you could work there. I felt sleazy just listening to him. I lost all respect for him. He preyed on poor, desperate people and ruined their lives so he could retire in his 30s. I found out from a friend that the investment firm was a boiler room, fly-by-night scam. Everyone who worked there was taken out in handcuffs. Not him. Health insurance denying treatments that your doctors have personally recommended. Health insurance companies insisting that you try other treatments first, or insisting that you work with in-network doctors who can't be seen for 6 to 8 months, intentionally delaying your proper treatment. It's effing murder as far as I'm concerned. I could keep listing ways that the health insurance industry is pure evil. Amen. Church cults in general, People's Temple, Heaven's Gate, etc. My uncle fell into one of these cults and it ruined him and his family for a long time. My cousins had to be given free lunches by neighbors, school, my grandparents, and our aunt in my family. All they would eat is bread, and if they're very lucky, oatmeal. Aunt and uncle gave away almost all their money to the cult. It took a lot of convincing for them to stop. My cousins turned out relatively okay for themselves, but I know it affected them quite a bit to this day. Anyone on the boardroom of a cable news company in America, you look outside and you see our society on the brink of collapse, and yet you choose to present this as what's important to Americans? Infotainment and consolidation need to go. We need more voices, and some of those have to be antagonistic to your sponsors, too. We need Fairness Doctrine 2.0. I think there are two types of evil. Those who believe they are good but unknowingly commit evil acts, and those that knowingly commit evil actions purely for their own benefit. I think the latter is certainly more evil, at least from a societal viewpoint. Individual actions that hurt others and only benefit a few people are seen as being evil. So to answer the question, that one megachurch pastor that owns like 4 private jets, paid for by the money he rakes in from his followers, that guy is effing evil. Anyone exploiting the poor for their own personal gain and lying that it's for the benefit of those poor people is truly evil, especially using religion as a tool of exploitation. The higher-ups of Intuit, they were supposed to make it free for low-income Americans to file their taxes. They purposefully made their websites a confusing maze to trick low-income people into paying for a service they were legally entitled to get for free. They lobbied the government to make sure that it stayed in partnership with them instead of making a separate website for filing. My mother, but she's dead, thank God. She choked me twice till I passed out, waited to do that after my dad died when I was 16, left handprints on my neck because she squeezed so hard. My friends and coworkers witnessed the proof because why should I hide the abuse? My brothers never tried to help, guess better me than them attitude. It's so deep and hurtful. Just please, parents, if you're stressed, upset, or whatever, don't abuse your kids or anyone. It has caused a lifetime of pain for me, and it's been many years. I still panic if someone comes near my neck or gets too close. Trust has been a lifetime issue for me. I still get therapy because of PTSD, anxiety, depression. I don't believe in good and evil, generally speaking, but if a man can be said to be evil, you can't do much better than Joe Coors Sr. Yes, as in the beer people, in my opinion. His own brother said he was slightly to the right of Attila the Hun, and for good reason. Joe was a founding member of the Heritage Foundation, which was not only funded primarily by the Coors family at the outset, but the Coors family agreed to give them $300K a year in perpetuity. He was also a founding board member of the Council of National Policy, the group that's kind of at the center of nearly everything that's gone completely off the goddamn rails in the US since 1981. If Ronald Reagan could have said to have a chief puppeteer, it would be the CNP. In that vein, Coors was also a member of Reagan's kitchen cabinet, and in that capacity was the architect of quite a bit of Reagan's environmental deregulation, in part by getting a protege, Supreme Court Justice Neil Gorsuch's mom by the way, to dismantle the EPA from the inside, who was so aggressive in the push to allow toxic waste to just be dumped wherever was convenient that even Reagan had a shit canner after less than 2 years due to pushback. He also started the first real attempt anyone had made toward anything like Fox News, which more closely resembled Sinclair Broadcasting, in that they made conservative news packages that claimed to be right down the middle coverage, and sold them to network affiliates all over the US. Compared all of that shit, firing striking workers, then replacing those striking workers with scabs who then joined the union specifically to vote to dissolve it, which he also did obviously, is just quaint old school robber barony. There's very little that is absolute shit today that Joe Coors Sr. didn't have a hand in, a real monstrous black hole of a human being. Senator Rick Scott of Florida. Read about his tenure as CEO of Hospital Corporations of America prior to him getting into politics. Under his leadership, the corporation was indicted and tried for fraud in what was the largest fraud case in U.S. history. The case resulted in a fine of $1.7 billion, the largest in U.S. history at the time. In another unrelated lawsuit, Scott invoked his Fifth Amendment privilege a whopping 75 times. The man is one of the most dishonest politicians in the U.S., and that's saying a lot. How he got to be governor and now senator befuddles me. Rupert Murdoch. He destroyed traditional journalism and turned it and media in general into a powerful tool of control for the elites. No one else has done as much to force the agenda of scumbags into the brains of the general public as he has. We're spiraling towards the end of civilization because of the ways he has redirected it for his own selfish benefit. So if you're wondering how or why Rick Scott became a senator in the US after all of that terrible behavior, he probably enriched a lot of people. So they paid him back. Right? My opinion. Tricia Cottam voted in as a Democrat for one of North Carolina's most deep blue districts. Then, 4 months into her term, she flips her party to Republican, granting them a majority in state representatives, thus culminating into a 12-week abortion ban as Republicans were able to narrowly override the governor's veto. Now, evil is subjective, but this is truly sinister, as it subverts the will of the majority of the people that voted for her. No amount of bribery is going to fix that busted hairline, so there's that, I guess. I don't know about true evil, but Oprah. She started as a trashy daytime TV like Maury Springer, but decided to act legit. However, she brought panic into the world, telling parents their kids were involved in rainbow parties, which never existed. She also brought Dr. Oz and Dr. Phil into the main consciousness and legitimized those scam artists. She also got caught with the James Frey thing, but instead acted like he was being confronted on her show. If anything, she's a mainstream fraudster. Jimmy Savile. After his death, hundreds of allegations of SA made against him were investigated, leading the police to conclude that he had been a predatory sex offender and possibly one of Britain's most prolific. He engaged in the SA of disabled children. He was given the keys to a high-acuity psychiatric hospital in Broadmoor. He used to spend time in hospital mortuaries, and there were accounts of him committing acts of necrophilia. He would raise millions for charity and had close relations with the upper echelons of society, including prominent politics like Margaret Thatcher and the royal family. He used this as a guise to get away with his crimes, which spanned from the 1950s till his death in 2011. U.S. education system and their student loans. They make teenagers get a loan they can't afford. The price for the education is high, too, in comparison to countries like Australia, UK, Germany. Make it possible to get rid of the loan even when they declare bankruptcy. The education system in the US is a huge financial exploitation, in my opinion. Yeah. The Kardashians. Their willingness to put aside all morals and continue to suck money from young people astounds me. Their constant lies and manipulation. I think the world is definitely a worse place with their existence. The damage social media has done will never be reversed, and they have played a major role in making it as damaging as they could, all for their own profit. Thing I don't really believe anyone is true evil, but if I had to say one person who personifies it, even if they're unaware, probably Jeff Bezos. His company has caused untold destruction to both the natural and human world. Amazon's facilities, from what I've heard, run their employees utterly ragged. Their warehouse workers seem to have rights akin to Roman slaves. And generally, the guy has the attitude of Lex Luthor if Lex was also indescribably dorky. Much of the CIA, KGB, and other billionaire-funded special ops meant to destabilize people, causing them to starve, revolt, or kill each other. Remember Oliver North, under Ronald Reagan, worked with drug dealers to get a cut while they sold crack cocaine to American citizens to fund his Contra program. Worst part was Ronnie's wife launched Just Say No while laying next to the biggest drug dealer in the USA, Ronald Reagan. Plus, to add insult to injury, he told all his Republican pals to invest in private prisons because they were going to put a lot of black men in jail after they got them hooked on cocaine and crack. F. Ronald Reagan. The guy was a dirtbag. And Oliver North, you're a terrible human being for what you did to so many families under the flag of freedom you swore to protect. You destroyed lives of Americans and sold out your love for your country. Big Pharma, Big AG, most economists, psychiatry, most video game publishers, at least half of all food scientists, fast food chains, Starbucks, energy drink companies, Coca-Cola, the company, and the GOP, throw that in, basically anyone who poisons the earth and their fellow people for profit. They're by far the worst, and I bet if we survive and advance to the next stage of human evolution, they'll look back in awe at how we let such people do what they're doing to us, and also be able to trace most of our society's woes back to this exact issue. I believe Elon Musk is utilizing his influence and purchase of Twitter to cause enough disruption in American politics and society to enable conservative social reform. Specifically, I believe he's intentionally trying to make anyone willing to hold left-wing political views fear for their life by boosting right-wing calls to violence into the spotlight on Twitter. He framed buying Twitter blue as supporting him in these views. He unbanned people who were known for their hatred. He removed the content filter that blocked and banned posts filled with bigotry and calls for violence. And there is a 100% chance to be unbanned on Twitter within 48 hours by saying you were mass reported by the cancel culture woke mob, which works regardless of how or why you were banned. The killers of Junko Furuta and their parents. One of the mothers of the murderers not only blamed Junko for ruining her son's life, even though he participated in her kidnapping, torture, and ultimately murder, but she actually would vandalize Junko's grave to the point where Junko's parents had to relocate her grave to an undisclosed location just so their daughter's grave would no longer be desecrated by this vile woman. I've met evil once. When I was very new to teaching, I encountered a student who was off, not in the way we usually associate with things like autism or ADHD. I've had plenty of students who fit under either of those labels, or both sometimes, and they are just a little different in their own special ways, not off in the way this one student was. This student was only 8, but he already had more write-ups than most high schoolers have, not minor ones either. These were major ones. Things like shoving kids off the jungle gym, destroying school property, bringing knives to school, dissecting insects on the playground, then putting the guts on other kids. Those kind of things. I don't know what was actually wrong with that kid. I raised warnings about him several times, but whatever happened behind the scenes didn't help. And I wasn't terribly surprised when, 12 years later, the kid went to prison for murdering the girl he had been stalking. I started teaching to help children, but Sometimes you just can't offer the help a child needs.